Some say life will beat you down, break your heart, steal your crown. Tom Petty wrote and sang these lyrics. I believe it's what you do in and after those critical moments that shape one's life, perspectives, and fuel one's indomitable spirit. Hello, I'm Dale Novick, owner and founder of Dale Novick Limited, a fine jewelry, handmade design and production business based in Southampton and Los Angeles. I'm truly honored to have been invited to share my story, as I have a tremendous passion for my work, which has been coupled with the worlds of film, architecture, art, fashion, music, and inevitably commerce. As a native Long Islander from the village of Old Westbury, where I raised my family, I preface my introduction with this inclusion because the natural beauty of Long Island has always imbued my life and permitted me to take risks, forge ahead and sometimes backwards, as I knew I could always return here. I've worked in creative endeavors my whole life, whether they be in fashion, in the auction world, buying, selling, studying, collecting, both fine and decorative objects. I'm a painter by practice, as seen in my first slide, and graduated from Cornell University with a degree in art history. Had I been able to create a portfolio of renderings and models, if classes had been offered in my high school, I might have attempted the pursuit of architecture. Alas, upon graduating from Cornell, I had a brief summer internship at Sotheby's, New York, before leaving for a graduate program that really honed my appreciation for art and objects. I graduated from a year-long course at Sotheby's Institute of Art in London, accredited with the Courtauld Institute, with the study of fine and decorative arts from the Renaissance to the present day. This afforded me the opportunity to visit private and public collections in and around London, which to me was simply fascinating. Living in London, traveling the continent frequently, as I had spent previous summers studying in Europe, and now remaining in Europe to work, was really remarkable in my book. I worked for an Italian dealer in old master paintings while living in Rome, who had a gallery in both Rome and London. I worked for him for over 2 years, and then it was time to return to the States. My stay in New York City only lasted about a year until I was off to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, where the plethora of semi-precious stones, the incredible beauty of the people, their country, the beaches, and day-to-day living really captivated and inspired me. I researched a way to apply my interest in Brazil, its natural bounties, and start designing and researching production of pieces to make in 18-karat handmade items, so I might make a go at this. I took a design class in Portuguese, found goldsmiths to interpret and manufacture my designs. Subsequently, at the request of my parents, I would return to Long Island every 2 months with the intention I had promised I would stay in Brazil for about a full year. It was on one trip home I showed my girlfriends what I was up to in Rio. One friend recommended the jewelry editor at Town & Country, whom I contacted and shared my story. This was in the mid-1990s. The tiny written piece about me and 2x2-inch photo T&C included on a piece featured in the slide on the right, which is a ubiquitous scarf ring, as you can see here, on a silk scarf, can also be worn on a finger, which I have on currently. This skyrocketed the birth of my business, and the orders flooded in. Subsequently, at least 8 other stories and features by Town & Country included my work over many years, again boosting my international exposure. I immersed myself into my business, having moved back to New York City after breaking a marital engagement to a Brazilian. The image on the right shows a model wearing a pair of chandelier images, an homage to Victorian concepts. This still would then be used on the sales platform of Moda Operandi, where I recently sold for about 2 years. Although not a trained goldsmith, my understanding and love for vibrant, textured, organic, and mixed media paintings translates into my brand's collections. Again, the work reflects nature, light, the use of color, form, and space, which I feel are really the ingredients of the landscape of Long Island. I'm old school. No CAD/CAM, digital programs, just freehand pencil and paper, starting with the polished gems in my hands. As a child, I admired my father's painting techniques using Indian inks on board. Additionally, his sculpting, use of drafting tools, and his home design builds helped hone my vision. He has been my greatest artistic and personal inspiration. History and influence are essential for really any creative endeavor to translate into a commercial vehicle, as seen in slide 3. The process of making a piece of jewelry, here you see the wax used in fabrication on the right, and the polished gold that ultimately houses the set stones for a pendant suede choker. I happen to be wearing the finished product that can be worn as a pendant or can be worn with a piece of suede as a choker. In New York City, I researched manufacturers, took GIA classes on the exchange, on the street, 47th Street is what I mean by the exchange, sourced reputable stone dealers, both internationally and locally, to work with to continue to translate my design and grow my brand. Since the digital age hadn't really been born, communication done by socializing, press kits, which is basically an accumulation of where you've been published and printouts and so forth, working with editors, retail buyers, etc. This led me to sell to Saks Fifth Avenue, consigning jewelry directly to publications for editorial exposures and inclusion on shoots and repeated editorial coverage internationally. No PR for years, I did it all myself. This boosted my brand and recognition. This was done while based in New York City and the Hamptons. Ralph Lauren saw my work on an employee. He greenlighted and commissioned me, and the company paid me to design and produce for New York Fashion Week resort collections, resulting in selling full collections in 6 national stores. This was while I was under the age of 30. I'm not 30. Our professional relationship continues to this day with various private label collections. Bergdorf Goodman, for example, hosted a trunk show of my work for several months during 2022 and 2023. On slide 4 is a Kieran Elizabeth storied Instagram shot. It shows the pink Pantone color of 2023, including one of my rings, selling with my collections in several of their stores, including seasonally in East Hampton. JCK Magazine recently wrote a digital piece on me in December of 2022, explaining why this particular color is one of my favorites. The digital age, the web, and the use of Instagram have been incredibly essential now for the sales of my brand, for the increased exposure, and for the stylists to pull my work directly from market, meaning from one of the retail stores where I sell, directly from market as well as from a PR company I began working with under 2 years ago. But relationships and interfacing are truly personally the key for me. You constantly have to play to stay, in my opinion. You constantly have to remain true to your aesthetic and maintain integrity while living one's life, sharing with family, and remaining grounded and relevant. This led to a recent collection of bones, beads, and silver I made for Ralph and has continued to complement my other traditionally colorful and layered looks. And this is a slide of items that I did. I was given the palette of evening collection by Ralph Lauren, and I was told to make it tribal to complement the clothes. So this is pretty much what I came up with in about 2 weeks, and I had to manufacture pretty much under the gun. I end with slide 6, which reflects the use of my work in the world of film, celebrity, and TV. This is all while living humbly in the village of Southampton and the beauty of Southern California. Now here you go again, you say you want your freedom. Well, who am I to keep you down? Sang Stevie Nicks, because his leather jacket had chains that would jingle. They both met movie stars, partied, and mingled. Again, Tom Petty. Thank you for your time and your patience tonight with setting up.
Thank you so much, Dale. You are a star. And now I'd like to invite Sylvia to come up. Sylvia Wong is the owner of the Roundtree in Amagansett, a small luxury hotel property that opened in 2020. Sylvia had a decades-long career as a corporate attorney at several different firms. In 2015, she joined the board of directors at a private investment firm, working closely with it to identify, evaluate, and negotiate real estate investments. It was Sylvia's love for travel and the wonderful memories she collected from those travels that inspired her to open the Roundtree. Sylvia, come on out. Yeah, you do it, because you know the timing. So it's going to be over here. If you can't, give it back to me.
Okay, great. Hi, good evening. Well, what a beautiful collection of jewelry from Dale. So, my husband, who's actually here tonight with me, and I have one child. His name is Justin. So I wanted to share with you tonight a letter that I wrote to Justin several years ago. So when he was, let me get to the first slide. So when Justin was young, both my husband and I had very busy career. As Cherie mentioned, I was a lawyer. My husband was a cardiologist. And when Justin was young, I was constantly worried and feeling guilty, actually, about being a working mom. And when he was about maybe 6 or 7, I thought about quitting, at least stepping back a little bit. And so I sat down with Justin and had a chat with him. So I told him, I said, what do you think if mommy, were to quit her job? His response wasn't really what I expected. So he had this really quizzical, I thought he would be thrilled, but he didn't, he wasn't. He had this very quizzical look on his face, and he asked me 2 questions. The first question was, he said, Mommy, what would you do if you didn't go to the office? So I thought, so for the first time, I realized that this little boy did not feel deprived at all. The fact that I wasn't picking up, from school or driving him to swim lessons or play dates. So it was all in my head. He really wasn't missing it. And in fact, I sensed a little bit of almost pride that he felt like his mom had her career, had her own thing to do, right? The second question that he had was puzzling to me. He asked, he said, what would happen to my computer if you quit? And it took me a couple of seconds to wonder what was he asking about. And it turns out that he, in his own little mind, he was thinking that he had a computer because I was working for IBM at the time. So that was the connection. So he was very worried about losing his computer if I quit my job. So on his 18th birthday, so just like that, I think in that 5-10 minute conversation, this little boy really gave me the freedom, really, to pursue a career without really guilt. It just relieved the pressure and really empowered me. And so on his 18th birthday, I decided to, instead of the usual gifts, I wrote him a letter to share with him basically the fruits of his empowerment. So I wanted to read to you the letter tonight. So, dearest Justin, I still remember vividly the first moments after you were born on a cold and snowy day. He was born in February in New York City. And the most blissful feelings your daddy and I had upon meeting you. We were overjoyed at the sight of our perfect baby and couldn't believe our luck. Through the years, the same feelings came back again and again as you were growing up to be a wonderful and thoughtful young man. We are so proud to be your parents. Years ago, people at work asked me what advice I would give to young lawyers. As you embark on a journey of life as an adult, I would like to share with you the same advice. I hope it's useful, no matter what career you pursue. Here it goes. So there were 4 points that I tried to summarize. First, be humble and confident. You would probably say, isn't it contradictory to be humble and confident at the same time? Not really. By being humble, you recognize that you don't have all the answers. You're keen to learn from others. At the same time, always keep in mind that you have lots of good qualities and are ready to contribute. So, have plenty of confidence in yourself. Number 2, be open-minded but have a point of view. Make a conscious effort to listen to others' viewpoints, especially if they're different from yours. I sometimes fall into the trap of hearing only what I wanted to hear. So before making any major decisions, get advice from people you trust and respect. You may end up doing exactly what you had planned to do, but I can assure you that this will always make your decision a better one. Once you've done your due diligence, don't be afraid to have a point of view, even if it's different from other people's. Number 3, it's very simple. There is no substitute to working hard. There's no shortcut in life. Whatever it is that you're working on, give it your best shot. The last one, embrace change and challenges. Change may be scary at times. It may take you out of your comfort zone, but more often than not, you'll find that change is positive, perhaps not in the way that you expected. And life can be challenging, and you're bound to run into obstacles and setbacks. These obstacles and setbacks may seem overwhelming at times, but no matter how bad things might seem at the time, they always get better eventually. So, have a great future ahead of you. Enjoy the journey. Love, Mommy. So that's it.
See, we're already mastering the clicker. Awesome. Thank you, Sylvia. Wonderful words of wisdom, and I think all of us now are thinking about things that we want to say to the people we love. Next presenter is Peter Sabbath. Peter is a partner at Oza Sabbath Architects, located in Bridgehampton. Peter was a fine art painter in the mid-90s when he first started designing and building loft spaces in Brooklyn's Dumbo neighborhood. Peter is a graduate of Tufts University and a 9-year member of the U.S. Green Building Council. In 2014, Peter met Nile, and their common passion for both design and construction led to a fast friendship. That's good that he's here then. And ultimately a partnership in 2015. You can team do it. I've seen that done on TV. Okay, thanks, Peter.
Quick,
So,
I think.
face it the right direction. It's the arrow on the right.
Okay, my timer.
And I should have had your slide there.
Oh, the arrow on the right.
First one. Oh, we forgot to do it.
There we go. Okay. Hi, everyone. As a parent and a business owner, I don't often get to think about myself much or spend much time delving into me, so I decided to take this 5 minutes and just focus it all on me, every bit of it. And I thought, I get one question that I get asked probably more often than any other is, how did I end up running and owning an architecture firm when I have no architectural training whatsoever and have no background in architecture? And I thought that question, which I get asked so often, was a good one to answer here. And what that involves is a little bit of a autobiography. And so that's where I'll jump in with that. So getting out of university in 1991 with an art history degree, I did what all kids whose parents have spent a fortune going to good schools do. I ended up finding work as a bike messenger in San Francisco, and living in a shared house with a rented bedroom, and I had my futon on the floor that I'd pulled out of the trunk of my car, and I had empty walls. And so I was like, what am I going to put on these empty walls? I don't have any money to buy any paintings. And so I went down to the hardware store and I bought a big roll of brown butcher's paper and some house paints. And I went home and I made some paintings and did it in my basement and showed them, to my friends, and my friends all thought it was great. And I started a painting career that way, never having painted before. 2 years later, I'd somewhat come to my senses, and I'd gone to work for the family business, selling plywood. So I was selling plywood and driving a plywood delivery truck in Brooklyn. And I had rented a loft in Dumbo, 95 era. And, there were artists in the neighborhood, and I would, go to work during the day and sell plywood, and I would come home and I'd paint at night, and my girlfriend lived with me. And this went on for a year or so, and then one day on a Saturday, I believe it was, I was painting during the day, and I opened my door to vent out my loft because I'd been painting in the house paints, because I didn't know how to use artist paints. I was just using like real horrible house paints with oil-based. It was not healthy. So I was venting it out, and some guy stuck his head in the door and said, "Hey, would you mind if I said hello?" And I said, "Well, who are you?" He said, "I'm a local gallerist, and I'm having a show in a couple of weeks that's going to focus on the up-and-coming Dumbo art scene. And I know you didn't call to have me come down, but I smelt the stuff in the hall, and you're doing something good in here." And I said, "Sure, come in." And he came in. And 2 weeks later, my girlfriend and I were carrying an 8-foot painting that I had made out of 2x4s and drop cloth canvas through the streets of Dumbo to deliver it to the gallery because he said he wanted it. And then the night of the show, it was hanging in the front window, and somebody bought it. And I was like, how did that happen? And so I sold my first painting, which was super exciting. And I was still delivering plywood and selling plywood during the days as well to make money. And so the next couple of years, I kept on doing all of that, painting and trying to sell paintings, and the gallerist would sell paintings here and there. And I also picked up another career in that time. I had moved into this loft, and I, just sort of decorated it in my style, which I didn't know I had a style at the time. It was just the way that I wanted to live and the way that felt comfortable. And my friends loved it, my family loved it, and it was fun. And if I wanted to put a sink in, figured out how to do plumbing. I asked somebody to teach me. And so I could do basic plumbing and sweating of pipes and putting PVC together and basic wiring. I'm so lucky I didn't kill myself, but I didn't. Did cause a couple floods, but luckily there was no one below me in the building. And that was okay. And then I became friendly with the owner of the building, and I convinced him to give me the lease on some burnt out loft spaces in the building, and long-term leases, and give me like 6 months to clean them up and work on them. And he was a young guy in his family business as well. His family business was the carting business in Brooklyn, very different than my family business, which was selling plywood. I didn't understand the difference back then, but now I do. So the young carting business person thought that was humorous, and he gave me these leases, and I renovated these places on my own at night, and I would sublet them out. And I started a whole business. I had 6 sets of tenants in the building that I'd collect rent from. And now I was painting. I was a slumlord of sorts, but in these nice places. And then I was selling plywood. And that, one day on a Saturday, I said to my girlfriend, I said, "Let's jump in the car. I've always wanted to go visit Jackson Pollock's house." And so we got in the car and we drove out east. And it was amazing walking through his studio, and the paint splattered all over the floor. And then kept driving past his house when we left, and there was a little house for sale. And I said, imagine if we could buy that. And she says, let's see how much it is. And we bought it. And it looked just like a trailer. In fact, it probably was a trailer. But to me, it looked like a loft. And so I looked at the house and I said, wow, I think I know I could renovate that and make that into something nice. And so we would go back and forth between Dumbo and this house, and I'd work on it on weekends. And through that process and through painting, I started to meet some of the local art scene out in the Hamptons. And one of the people that I met, by the way, this is one of my paintings from 1999. I wanted to put the painting that I sold, the first painting, but I couldn't find the image of it. So this was like 2 or 3 years later, and it's like 7 feet by 7 feet. And I don't know, it's sold somewhere, I don't even know where it is. But so through the art scene out here and my painting, I ended up meeting Ross Bleckner. And Ross was a huge fan of my work and really, really encouraging. And then he also came to my house one night when I had a party at this little house in Springs. And loved the house, and he looked at me and said, hey, will you renovate my house? And so this was, I of course said yes, because I didn't know how to say no at the time, and I still don't know how to say no. And so I said yes, and so this was the house down in Sagaponack that Ross bought from, I believe, Truman Capote. So this was Truman Capote's house that had the fire, and then Truman, I think, was rescued from the fire in the house. Then I think Ross bought it from his estate, something like that. But then I got to, I'd only done my own house, by hand, and I had done these lofts in Dumbo, and the next thing you know, I'm faced with a project like this. You do it. And so, it was a hell of a lot of fun, and he was an amazing person to work with, just that creative mind like that. And then obviously what happened was, this consumed so much of my time, I started painting a little bit less, and I started spending more time out east. And then once you finish something like this, then people start asking you to do their houses, and other houses started coming, and then I realized suddenly I had a business, and I was like, how did this happen? And so I'm painting less and less, and I was making and designing houses, and I was also now building houses as well, because I wasn't a builder, but I was hiring now people to sort of general contracting in a makeshift fashion to do this as well. And then it turned into houses like this, which is only a few years later. So it sort of grew quickly. And I think this was, clients coming, and this is a friend of mine's house who's, I think, here tonight, Carol. And this was an amazing opportunity up in Sag Harbor to design a ground-up house, which at that point I really had only done one other. And so there's sort of, it was just a matter of just saying yes, 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 and never saying no. And so what I was also learning at the same time, being a designer of sorts and being a builder of sorts, but not really having any training in either of them, you attract a certain crowd. And so the people that would all come to work for me were sort of unique individuals. A lot of them were artists. A lot of them were people who were non-traditionally drawn to architecture as well. And one of them was an artist or a sculptor who worked for me for a couple of years and actually helped me build this house, Cy Keener. And he decided at one point he was going to leave, working for me and go back to Stanford and get his master's in his MFA and go teach. He was leaving architecture, and at his leaving party, he introduced me to Neil Ayoza, who is my partner now. And at that point, I met an architect, and he had come to the field from a building background. So he was a builder, he was an architect. He had everything, and he also wasn't traditionally brought up in our system, having grown up in India. And so he had this other sort of worldly take and view on what we were doing, just as I had. The only view I had was what I was, came up with, because my academic career gave me no view into what I was actually doing. And so we hit it off and decided, okay, let's join forces, let's put this together and see what we can create as a team. And the word team is another thing I wanted to bring up here, because one of the reasons I was so drawn towards designing houses and was so easily sort of like put my painting on hold for a little while was because when you're in the studio, it's just you. It's all you. Everything you create is just you. The pressure's all on you. Whether you make the sale, it's all on you. When you design a house, it's everyone. It's everyone in the office. It's everyone, it's your carpenters. They're contributing to the design. Your plumbers, your electricians, the trades, everybody who's working on that house is sort of somewhat contributing to the work of art you're making. And the client, the client, you don't have a house without a client. And even if an architect's designing his own house, his wife's the client. There's a dialogue, and that's what makes, architecture so interesting to me versus, that career of just sitting in your studio making a painting, and so I was drawn to that. So, and that was one of the things that Nile and I really hit it off over. Okay, I'm on my second page now. Okay, so then a house like this led to a house like this, which was just featured in the New York Times this past a couple months ago. And, this was built up in Springs, and it's another ground-up house, and very non-traditional design, and we attracted a very non-traditional client. And this is like a little half-acre up in Springs. And let me see what I was going to say. Like when you look through and you look from those three houses, it's hard to pick up an actual style. And where a lot of architecture firms or design firms will have like a signature style, and people go to them and they know what you're going to. We want one of the houses that you've done before. Everything we have, if you look at our website, is almost different. And and clients will ask me that. They'll say, "Hey, I don't, how did this happen?" And I'll say, well, every client is different. And because our houses are really an extension of the collaboration between us and our client, every house is going to have its own personality and have its own voice. And so this looks very different from, Carol's house, which was before. And because the client was involved, different people in the office were working on it. And that's just what happens. So, I really think that is a strength, of a design firm to be able to do that, an architectural design firm. What else? Okay, now I was going to say something else. This is also, because I had this background in renovating lofts in Dumbo, in Brooklyn, lofts of essentially doing that type of work is a renovation. It's not a ground-up construction. So we are particularly renovation-friendly, and I'm drawn almost more towards, Nile's probably prefers to do the ground-ups. I prefer to do the renovations because they really look like problems to me that need to be solved. And this is a house, the top image is what the house was before, and the bottom image is what we created out of it. And, the client came to us and just said, the whole front of our house doesn't work. And so what we ended up doing was chopping off the whole front of their house, extending it out 10 feet, making it interesting, and then putting it back on. And we, it's something like that maybe another architect might shy away from, but we look at it and say, oh my God, that's brilliant, that's a problem we want to solve, and we jump at it. And it's, again, I think this is something that, because of my non-traditional, background and this lack of sort of architectural training to bring me to the career, that I just embrace stuff like that and want to do things like that. So again, it's a little bit of a strength. Now here's something also. This is an interior image of a house, and now that's something we design, we build, we do renovations. We are also now doing interiors, and we are going to be opening an interior showroom or an interiors office in Manhattan this year. And again, it's not maybe your typical route for an architectural firm to go, but again, I didn't get here in the typical route. And so we figure why not? We really enjoy doing it, and we'd rather create a cohesive sort of product in the end that's sort of us from the beginning to the, from the start to the finish. And so that's something we're doing here. And this is an interesting one. This was a house that was two houses attached by two brothers who lived there, and the house was split in the middle and had two of everything. 2 kitchens, 2 living rooms, 2 master bedrooms. Everything was split right down the middle with a pocket door in the middle of the house. So they could either be together or they could be completely separate and have their own house. And this client bought it, and that's what we created out of it. And this is just the interior dining room and kitchen, which was beautiful. Now this is an image that I wanted to end with, because now this is a house that just got finished in Ditch Plains, and those are the clients. And you typically hear all these about projects with architecture projects where couples during the project either fall apart, Husband and wife are fighting the entire time. That's more, sadly, more normal, the norm than it is the exception. This is the exception. This couple came to us, they were dating. By literally the time they moved in, she was pregnant and they were married. And the sweetest, nicest, it was the most fantastic design process, build process with them. They're the loveliest people. And I just thought they, everybody deserved to hear a story like that. So don't be scared away the next time a project comes. You think about a home project and think about what it's going to do to your personal life. I think so. As a summation of all of this, I think what I just wanted to say is really just, I think, sometimes taking the non-obvious route is really the way to go, and just to not be so scared of saying yes, and maybe don't be scared if you don't have the training in something. Go for it and just try it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. May all your clients be as nice as that last couple. And may all of us keep saying yes. And thank you for everybody who said yes tonight to come here and to present. The next presenter, oh wow, that really works if you use it. The next presenter is Amy Cherry Abbott-Ball. She is the creative force behind Shushugiban House, the first boutique wellness destination in the Hamptons, blending global wellness philosophies with state-of-the-art practices in an environment that embodies quiet luxury. Following a successful career as an attorney at firms in the US and Japan, Amy attended Harvard Business School's New Paths program for women seeking to explore new opportunities, which was the catalyst for her inspired transition to combine her interests in health, wellness, and design, and to create Shushugiban House. So I welcome Amy Cherry Abbott-Ball. This clicker, and just try to advance it, see what happens. Okay. And then one more thing. One of your slides, is the
Video?
The video, so you'll use the pointer, you'll use the mouse. When it comes time, you're just going to move the mouse to the right spot and click play. Just not there yet, but when you get to your...
Okay, I'm going to tell. Okay. So like Peter, I had a rather unconventional background for what I'm doing now in hospitality. I'm all consumed by the project, so I'm mostly going to speak about Shushugiban House, which is right next door. I was afraid of that. As Sherry said, my background is in law, and I was initially in New York City, then Chicago, and then Japan. And when I came back to New York, I was introduced to the East End. I saw the property just to the east of us, which was, I think, Whitmore's and a lot of things. It was a bit of a mess, actually, over there. And went into the main barn there and was just enthralled. It felt magical, but it was very traditional. And I thought this would be an amazing place to do a wellness retreat, which started out as something extremely simple, like a yoga hiking retreat. We thought we'd just renovate the two barns and that would be it. Peter helped me renovate the main barn, actually, and make it from a very traditional barn into something very modern. So, as said, I'm going to mostly speak about Shushugiban House. We're proudly a year-round destination wellness retreat, if you're not familiar with us, and founded and operated and designed almost entirely by women, although we let Peter participate somewhat, and based upon, in part, my experience in Japan and my parents as well,
And my sons were born there, by the way, so we have a big, long connection to Japan. The principle of wabi-sabi, which is simplicity, seeing beauty and the healing properties of the natural world, and acceptance of imperfection, although that's sometimes hard for me. So we combined the local architectural vernacular of the traditional barns that were there by renovating them, and then adding new structures that were more of like modern beach cottages, as you can see up here, and that's the main barn. This used to be a very, an old trellis with wisteria, and we made this glass connector between the two barns, which made it really cool. We've tried to be sustainable. We have geothermal cooling and heating, solar panels for the electric along that pretty much supports the whole facility, and have also organic products and try to source locally to the extent that we can. Oops, is this the next one? Yeah. For programming, so we offer overnight stays in the back. We have 13 rooms, and but the overnight stays are really almost secondary to all of our programming. And as some of you may know, we also have pure day programs in the spa and throughout the property. So we have a large yoga team. Everyone multitasks. For instance, Brittany does the Instagram. That's Agnes in the middle. She's our marketing head, who Sherry knows. The spa director's on the left. So we took people who had no backgrounds, basically, in hospitality and brought them together and kind of allowed them or forced them to do things that they weren't necessarily comfortable with or had any experience in, which I think was a great thing. So everybody stepped up and created this incredible space. We have a lot of unconventional offerings, such as, oops, sorry. I don't know. Oh, this is the video that I probably don't know how to do. Sherry, what? And maybe that's it. So we have Watsu, which I can explain later. It'll take too long now. With sound, we have aerial yoga, wide range of energy work, and an exceptional culinary program headed by a Michelin star chef. So it's not your typical wellness salad. And we source mostly from the local farms, Green Thumb and others. Okay, I don't know how long this is. With COVID, we had to pivot a lot. We started out with all communal meals and group programming, and that obviously wasn't going to fly. So we had to change our spaces, change our programming, adapt to that. This shows the whole project because we expanded to 3 properties next door, 2 residences, and the inn, which you all might know is the former White Fences, which is now Shusagiban. And so we have quite a facility now. Here we do at the inn we do some healing work, and we have a great view of the parish from the spa roof deck. Okay. Oh, I don't know, sorry. So we've grown quite a bit since we opened in mid-2019. Okay. Okay, we skipped all the way to here. Okay. I don't know if any of you remember when when Whitmore's was there, the Buddha was all the way at the back and you could see it, but we built the spa building in front. So we took the Buddha, moved it from the back of the building to the front of the spa building so that everybody could, the community would still be able to see it, and passersby and so forth. It was a big project. I didn't have much. I had done some residential renovations and so forth, but nothing like this. Really, the infrastructure was the most challenging part, because I think we now have maybe 12 structures, 14 structures over the whole facility. Our newest addition is Shusugiban Lab, which is a biohacking program. So we're introducing more high-tech technology and actually integrating it into what we offer, in traditional healing. So that to me is exciting. I've always been interested in that. And so that we will be rolling out this winter. What else? I think I've missed a lot, but that's pretty much all. I hope that you'll all come and see how magical it is. We're number one destination spa, I forgot the marketing part, in the US. I think we're 13 in the world, which is pretty good for a little watermill. And we've had a lot of good press, appreciative guests, and an amazing staff that built, young locals who built this place and continue to run it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Amy. I always, the aerial view is like just amazing for me, because you just don't really know how big that space is over there. I had no idea. But thank you. Now, our last presenter is Mark Schiffert. Let me forward. Mark was born in France, grew up in Brazil, went to school in Canada, and moved to the U.S. in 1983. Mark grew up in an art family where his mother was an international art dealer specializing in French and Israeli contemporary art, and later Brazilian art too. By profession, Mark is a New York State licensed engineer with a professional architectural engineering practice in Southampton. Mark is also the co-chairperson of the Southampton Village Planning Commission and a member of the Town of Southampton Licensing Review Board. I met Mark here at the parish, as he is also one of our wonderful docents. So, Mark, come on.
Okay, where's the clicker? Okay, so click here. So it's very nice to see such a great attendance tonight, and especially in January in the Hamptons. And I just want to say here that we're lucky to have our mayor, Jesse Warren, as a part of the attendance. Thank you for coming, Jesse. So tonight my presentation will be a little bit different than the previous presentations. They made me think about the last book from Mel Brooks, which is called All About Me. And here I decided to talk to you tonight about blurred lines between art, architecture, and engineering, and which has been always part of my life. As Sherry mentioned, I was born in France and I graduated in engineering, and my mother was an art dealer and my father was an engineer. And my father traveled all over the world. He was a graduate from one of the few leather engineering schools in the world, which is located in Lyon, France. And so And I came to New York in 1983, worked for some large engineering firms, and I decided to start my own business in 1988 and moved to the Hamptons in 2003. We had grown the business where I had offices in Brazil, offices in France, and now, since now, I'm like really semi-retired here in Southampton. So the thought of art, architecture, and engineering is when you look at some of the monuments, like here, when you look at the Notre Dame de Paris, you know, what do you see? Do you see a work of art? Do you see a work of Gothic art? Or do you see an example of Gothic architecture? Or do you see an example of Gothic engineering? This was built in around 1200s, years 1200. The same thing here. When we go on the top here, you have Mies van der Rohe. It was called the Barcelona Pavilion, built in 1929, and here we have our own arch in St. Louis that was designed by Eero Saarinen. And when you look at this arch, you know, what do you see? Do you see a piece of art? Do you see a piece of architecture, since it's a building, or do you see an engineering feat? Here we have this is another building from Eero Saarinen, that's Terminal 5 at JFK, or here this is the Oculus transit building that was designed by Santiago Calatrava. Santiago Calatrava was first a structural engineer, and he's now a very well-renowned architect all over the world. And here again, do you see a building, do you see a work of art, or do you see engineering? The one that was the ultimate engineer, artist, and architect is Leonardo da Vinci, who, you know, thought both of the helicopter, and he was the architect and designer for the Chateau Chambord, which was built in the 1500s back in the Loire Valley. So the call to action that I would like to make tonight is that for us here in the Hamptons, we have always been like the word is in French is berceau of arts, since you know, we had the William Merritt Chase, who in the last century here established some of the greatest art school in the country, and then here we are also very lucky to have a tremendous talented architects in this area, and our communities have recently also become leaders in energy conservation, sustainability, and technology. So we should really continue to be leaders in the nation in those three fields. And art has definitely been an amazing part of our community. So here I'm inviting also everybody to spread the word about the parish. I'm myself a docent here, and it's been a tremendous experience. And now we have a new executive director, a renewed direction for the parish. So, well, you know, I encourage everybody to be involved. So I thank you very much for coming tonight.